So tell me about your best moments or your worst moment in student ministry, though. And once again, you haven't been in that long, but you and I discussed this. We had a pre-discussion for those of you guys listening, and we had a pre-interview. You thought, well, I haven't got that much, but everything you're saying was like, no, this is right on track. So, what was your worst student ministry moment that you remember at this point?
I kind of have thought about this, and maybe it's a message for anybody listening or watching. Um, but I don't like to think of things as like worst moments, right? Because I think everything is a learning lesson, and I think God puts these things in our life. And so, I also don't like to think in the negative. And so, whenever something bad happens, I kind of have thought about this, and maybe it's a message for anybody listening or watching. Um, but I don't like to think of things as like worst moments, right? Because I think everything is a learning lesson, and I think God puts these things in our life. And so, I also don't like to think in the negative. And so, whenever something bad happens, I definitely have a hard time dealing with it. But I don't ever consider it a worst moment because I'm like, okay, well, what can I learn from this? And recently I had a couple things all happened in the same week, and I can share that on Sunday. This was a couple weeks ago now. Um, I had learned on Monday that one of my good friends here on island passed away on Sunday on a bike ride, and that next week it was spiritual warfare for the entire week. And I mean, Satan chose to use that time to just try to bring me down and bring down the chaplain that I'm working with, and um, I mean, we had everything from, suicidal ideation in the youth group. And we had a couple things before. So at youth group, we have a question box where the kids can like be anonymous and provide either a prayer request or a question about their faith or something that they're struggling with that they're reading or whatever. And we've had a couple notes in there about kids who have been kind of depressive in state. And so I think they're willing, because it's anonymous, to be able to put that question in there. But then we also had a leader decide that he was going to date a student, which I had to let him go, of course, which I think most youth organizations would agree with. Right. It was really tough because he was young, and I get like they're close in age, and on the outside of ministry, love the guy to death. He's an awesome guy. We worked really close together. He was very teachable. He was wanting to learn more about how to do ministry and what that looked like. So it was really, really hard to let him go and make that decision. But we did, and we're going to move on from there. And that was all in the same week. And oh, by the way, we had one other thing going on with club where there was some accusations of bullying happening within the club. And so that was another thing that it was just like thing on top of thing on top of thing. And so it wasn't a worst moment. It was a worst week with everything piled into it.
Yeah. No. That's right. That is a moment that people can relate with. If they've been in any time at all, you're going to have something like that that's relatable. So what you shared there is no small thing. It's really what people are looking at, and it is spiritual warfare. Things like that happen in all kinds of realms, but they don't think of it as being spiritual if they don't have a relationship with God, or they're not seeking that. Those are spiritual too. But we recognize them as spiritual warfare because we understand that we are at war. And by the way, the great thing about you being in the military and being in ministry full time now is that you're in God's army. I mean, the bottom line is, I would tell my volunteer staff all the time, we're at war. We forget that and I have to remind myself that when we are going into a meeting, when we are living life day to day, we are at war. We are a target. We got a target on our backs. And you understand that, especially because you are military. And some of my best volunteers were military, Marines, Army. I'm trying to think. I think I had an Air Force, had one guy that actually had been in all three. He was a medic in all three, Marines, Army, and Air Force. Great volunteers because you understand chain of command, you understand order, you understand warfare, and those are things that we're all dealing with on a daily basis. If you're not attuned to that, or a little bit longer in your faith, then you don't get that. But as a military person, you start getting those things pretty quickly. In fact, New Testament, they talk about several centurions and army leaders and government officials, and that really got the faith quicker than a lot of their Jewish, brothers. So I like guys like you because of that very thing. You understand spiritual warfare, and you last longer a lot of times because you're used to enduring. The hurry up and wait thing is a big thing, isn't it? It's a real thing. What was your best moment so far?
Like you said, I've been doing this for almost 3 years, and I mean, the first 2 years they were just kind of, I guess you could say, going along. Like it was just kind of happening because I was still trying to get my feet wet on like what does it mean for me to be the guy, because my predecessor had left to Dallas that summer, I guess it was the summer of 18 now. Man, he's been gone a long time. But we're still good friends. We hang out on Zoom every now and then and have chats over the phone. Sometimes we work out together. But anyway, ministry moment. So COVID, right? COVID kind of struck the nation everywhere. And I've always had a mentality, and I don't know if it's because I'm military or because it's just the way that I am, but I've always had this mentality of replace and not cancel. And it was really heartening, I guess, and also like a confirmation that I'm in the right organization with Youth for Christ, that they also came out with replace, not cancel. And so everything that we do ministry-wise, it's like, okay, we had to cancel this, but how can we do it instead? And so when when the country shut down and we here in Hawaii shut down for COVID, I think I took a week off between the last club and the next club so I could figure out what I was doing with Zoom. And then that next week we were on Zoom, and like there was just no slowdown at all. It was, a trying time to figure out like what games to play and keep the kids interested and stuff like that on Zoom. But anyhow, the best ministry moment, I'll finally get to that part of the story.
Right.
That summer, of course, COVID shut down everything. And I had found out, or I had heard about like these drive-through graduations. And I was like, well, that sounds like fun. I wonder if I could do that. And so I got talked to some leaders, and I got a little gift bag together, put a Bible in there, pen set, and a couple other things. And we drove around. We put streamers and banners on our cars. We'd pull up in front of a senior's house, honking our horns and like screaming out the window. And then I'd walk up and give them their gift bag and talk to them about like, hey, where are you going to go to college and all that kind of stuff. Well, not too long ago, like I said, my predecessor had left before, back in 2018. And so some of these kids that were graduating knew him as their youth leader. And while I had a relationship built with them, I knew that it was going to be something special if he was there. And while he was in Dallas, I brought him up on, Google Hangout, FaceTime, whatever you want to call it. And I let him talk with them. I just held the phone up like this. I have some pictures of me, like I'm just standing there like with my phone out like this. And,
great.
The seniors all loved it. And I think I even got one to almost tear up. So,
yeah. There's moments like that are more spontaneous, that are such God sightings, for people. And so that's a cool thing. And I like, what was the phrase that Youth for Christ and you use as well? That was the same. Say that again.
Replace, not cancel.
Replace and not cancel. What a huge statement. And I'm sure some have picked up on doing things like that. But that is, if you haven't, that is a massive insight. Replace, not cancel. That's how everything in ministry should be. Replace and not cancel, because we don't need the negative. We need the positive, which is one thing that it brings. It brings us to campus life, though. You were telling me something about, and once again, you're on a military base. I want people to understand that where you're doing ministry is with military students, children of military personnel that are moved around every so many years. And so these students are different than the average student, unless they're a student of a corporation or something where the parents move with corporations. But tell us about those students and what that ministry looks like. And you said campus life. Youth for Christ USA has done something with that to make it more of a unit worldwide. Go into detail about that a little bit.
Every military site, campus life military site, used to just be an affiliate. And so essentially what that means is they would all fall under like one supervisor, but they would kind of be on their own as far as like programming and things like that, and finances, you know, fundraising, things like that. What they decided to do was take all the military worldwide and put us all underneath the military chapter, which is just going to help out all the sites, to include new sites, because I tell you what, it seems like almost every couple months, maybe we have somebody that's interested in either being new staff at a new location, or a chaplain who's reaching out saying, hey, I heard about your campus life program. I'd love to talk to you guys about being on our base. And, with the chapter mindset and with the fundraising that way, that's going to help out the military as a whole as we continue to build out missionary fields at these different bases. But yeah, for the students, they are definitely an interesting group of people. And I say people very properly, because they go through a lot of life changes very quickly, and they have to learn maturity a lot faster than a lot of their peers do. They move bases. I might have a student here in Hawaii, maybe 2 years. That's a good average, because their parents aren't always like right on the ball on like finding the local program or the youth group or whatever, or even settling down on a church as a whole. At best, I get 3 years. I get a full 3 years with them. But even then, I only get 3 years with them, and then they move away. And so it's like, what can I do to help them with that? And if I can share a story, we like to send off the students well, at least the best we can, whenever they move. And so the hard part with that is when you're the last one to leave of your like youth group generation that you're with. Mm-hmm. And so how we do it is, at the end of somebody's tour, when they're about to PCS, they'll come to their last club. I'll have them stand up in front. And of course, no kid wants to stand up in front, but they don't have to do anything but stand there and just listen. And I offer up to the kids who are sitting in the sanctuary to stand up and just, share how the student had impacted their life. And what gets really hard is when you have a group of students, in this case, it was 3 girls, and they were the last ones of their like generation to really leave. And so they didn't really have any good built relationships, because almost everybody in the youth group were new during the COVID time. And so, I wouldn't say it got awkward, but it got awkward,
Right.
Yeah.
PCS, though, tell us what PCS is for us non-military.
Oh, yeah. So PCS is a permanent change of station. Although I joke with the kids, like, it's never really permanent, because you're only there for another 3 years. But essentially, it's just the military telling you, your family, that the military member is going to move from point A to point B, whatever point B is, and you're going to be there for 3 years. Sometimes the military assigns them to Korea, and they go there for a year without their family, and then deployments and stuff like that as well. So that's kind of what PCS is all about.
Tell these students that you're dealing with, they're handling things at an accelerated pace. Life is accelerated for them. They know it's going to keep changing. It's been changing probably since they were born. A lot of them probably born while their parents were in the military. And so they're grown up in the system. What are the negatives you see, and what are the positives you see in these students?
I do want to share one student story again, because this kid, he likes to instigate but be kind-hearted about it, kind of. When he came from the mainland, he used to work at Chick-fil-A, and we don't have a Chick-fil-A here. But every time he comes to club, he wears his Chick-fil-A shirt, and gets under my skin. But
teasing you people.
Yeah. Now there's supposedly one on the way, but we'll see if it ever actually gets here.
Right.
But no. So one thing to know about military kids, and I think maybe a lot of people have heard this term before. A lot of people call them military brats. And there are some kids that take that as like a badge of honor, and other kids that are like, don't call me a brat. I'm not a brat. Like, I'm a good kid. I follow the rules, and I listen to my parents and all that kind of stuff. And so I think, the good thing about, military kids are they're very resilient in being able to come to club for the first time and just start building friendships. We still have those shy kids that take a while to warm up to others, but for the most part, they want connection. They want to get to know somebody else that's their same age. Maybe they go to the same school. Maybe they're all homeschooled and they need to find friends. And, club's a great way to do that. So as much as I don't want club to just be a hangout spot, I'm well aware it's going to be a hangout spot for some kids because it's the only time they get to see their friends. And I think the hard part, with military students is one, they're really smart. So I got to be smarter, and every now and then it doesn't work, but that's okay. They're helping me learn too, and again, they're students, and they get to deal with. So in the military, we have a culture, and I'll give you an active duty experience. I can tease somebody who's my friend who's in the Army all day long and talk about Army and Army this, Army that, and he can rag on me, Air Force this, Air Force that. But if somebody from the outside comes in, a civilian, I don't want to use that like derogatory, right? But that's what we call people not in the military, civilians. If a civilian, starts ragging on my Army buddy about being Army, we're all going to jump in and just like get on that civilian and be like, you don't even know what you're talking about. And the same thing with the military students is, they kind of build this bond because they have this similarity of being military students, military kids. But when they go to a location that either there's been some bad things in the past that's happened between the local culture and the military culture, they kind of get this mindset of, well, people on the outside of the fence don't like me because I'm a military kid, so I don't want to go off base ever. And to be honest, you could spend 3 years, I think, at any military location and not go off base. Because almost every location has a BX, a base exchange. Think of it like a little Walmart or a little shopping center. You can get clothes, you can get shoes, you can get, food, you can get Starbucks, all that. There's a post office on base. There's restaurants on base. Usually there's a Chili's. If it's an Air Force location, there's a Chili's there, or some other restaurant available. And dry cleaning, I mean, you don't have to go off base ever if you didn't want to. And especially here in Hawaii, again, you said it was paradise. And I think I can count on my hand how many times I've been to the beach for personal reasons. Like on Hickam, on the base, we have 2 beaches. And so you don't even have to go off base to go to the beach. You can go off base, or you can stay on base and go to the beach. You can go hang out in the water and swim. You can go surf because you can walk out to where there's some surf, on all of that. And so literally you don't have to leave the base at all. And that's something that the students, when they're dealing with this cultural conflict, that they just like, you know what, I can just go to club and be safe and be happy and not go off base where I have to deal with all that cultural nonsense because I'm going to leave in 3 years. So why do I have to deal with it?
But the average military kid may be a little sharper than the average student because just the type of person that would join the military, the type of person that would be traveling the world and staying in for long extended periods of time. So you are probably dealing with that different sort of person. And they're almost like a fraternity. They're like a fraternity sorority, possibly. And that, this is, we all of us students, we know what this is like. Those people out there don't. But tell me what you were talking about. And before we do that, we're going to go into telling us what you're wanting to do with the local youth pastors. We talked about that since we're on the subject. But here's what I did not do at the beginning. We got to do it right now. Tell me how people can get in touch with you. Tell me how they can send money to support you, because let me tell you what, guys, I was Youth for Christ for 6 years. I starved for the first 3. I actually had investments, but I could not touch the investments. And I was horrible at raising money. And that is across the board with most people in ministry. They're usually good at one or two things, ministering or raising funds. Very seldom are they good at both. And so Chase and I talked about it. Yeah. And some of them are. There's a few. I've known a couple. Mm-hmm. Chase, tell us how we can send money to you.
Well, to stay in touch, I'm on all the socials, Twitter and Snapchat. And that's at ChazzyMac808. CHAZZYMAC 808. I usually am on Instagram the most out of those 3. I mainly follow Twitter for Elon Musk updates and SpaceX, but
There you go. There you go.
and then I'm also on Facebook. It's kind of hard, so get your pen ready. It's at YFC CLMIL HI. So YFC Campus Life Military Hawaii. That's just for Facebook. And then also I have a website. It's YFC Campus Life Military High HI. And that's for that's like my daily or my monthly newsletter that I used to put out. We went to the chapter model, so the chapter is now handling newsletters. But on there in the About Us section is a little bit about me and my family, and also the pages, the links for going to donate. So, I really appreciate anybody coming on as ministry partners. As you know, they are very vital to the mission, especially with COVID right now. Even the chapel that I serve with, the base chapel, they're in a financial because of COVID. And so, now more than ever, do we need more people to step in and remember, oh yeah, I should be giving my tithing every weekend. I should be, supporting missionaries that are out there doing the work, and things like that.
Yeah, that's important, and it's important for me to have you say those things, because for those, if there are mostly youth workers listening, they get it, but also we're the ones teaching about what God says about giving. And so it's good for us to give as well to each other, because I'll tell you what, and if you may love him, you may hate Rick Warren, who's with Saddleback Church, but Rick Warren says this. He says, we are hands down the most giving church in the world. He said, because we model it. We model it. And what he said was this. He said he and his wife decided to give up to 10% more per year since they were married than they did the year previously. And or it was that they would go up at 1% anyway. And they said, and the years that they were getting paid less, they would still go up. It may only be 0.5% or 1% or something like that. But the entire time they've been married, they kept giving more. And he said, why do you think God let me write Purpose-Driven Life, which is the second biggest selling book in the world other than the Bible? The first is the Bible. He said, because he knew that I'm going to give it away. He said, he knows where I'm going to give it. He said, and what I understand, he didn't say this in speech. He gave back $25,000 a year, I think, is what he was. No, he's getting paid a lot more now. I forget how much it was, but he paid back 25 years worth of salary because of the book. So, but one thing he said was we model it. And so we know we can't outgive God, but we forget that when we're starving at times, you know what I mean? And that God will provide. And some people right now are saying, well, you know what, then Chase, God's going to provide. No. Chase is going to be provided by you and me giving to him and Lisa. Lisa's your wife's name, right? I did say it right. Okay. Mm-hmm. And I didn't call her Rachel or Ruth or something like that. Lisa was right. Okay. And so, and wives especially feel this pain. They feel the struggle, because if you're a guy and you've studied anything about marriage, you know that security is the heartstrings of a wife. She needs, not wants, she needs security and to feel that security. And in ministry, it's really hard to feel secure on any level. So guys, give to Chase and his family. Don't think somebody else is going to do it. Our rule of thumb was 1 to 10%, no matter how many people you reach out to. And this is the rule in advertising, period. Secular, Christian, it doesn't matter. 1 to 10%. So if we're reaching, 10,000 people, you might get $100, you might get $1,000, or you might get 10 people, you might get 1,000 people that are giving. But it is not that easy. And remember, this is warfare. So people are at war about their money. Should I give it? Should I hold on to it? Does Chase get it and Lisa, or does somebody else? And remember, he's raising a 13-year-old child. And some of you are going through the same thing. And he needs your encouragement. I know what that's like. And I know what it's like for a donor to come out of nowhere. And that the guy I thought didn't even like me. and the next 3 years my salary was paid for because of this guy my last 3 years of campus life. But that doesn't happen to everybody. Different things happen. So give us that one more time. What's that place that we can go to when we see the links to send you money? That one
YFC.
YFC. There you go.
YFC Campus Life Military HI at .org.
Okay. And so here's the deal, Campus Life, we are missionaries, Youth for Christ, Young Life, Fellowship of Christian Athletes. We don't always see, we call them parachurch, and that kind of takes the sting out of it. No, they're actually missionaries. They're actually home missionaries. In fact, student ministers and campus ministers like you are our last defense before adulthood. And statistically, we know for years the stats keep changing and become harder and harder. And that is, if we don't reach students, when I entered in student ministry, by the time they're 18, the chances were so slim once they left high school that they come to know Christ ever. And so we are that last force that God uses, and that's the importance of student ministry. And so we don't need to tell everybody that knows that. The rest of you, give me a call, give Chase a call, and we'll let you know again. So, we got the students there. They're changing every 3 years. They're coming in pretty savvy right off the bat. The one thing that I heard you say was that they make friends quickly.
When a new student shows up to club, I kind of know like who my go-to other students are that have been there for a minute, to know like which ones are more outgoing and which ones are more, friendly to just go and hang out with. And so I'll connect the new students with them, or I'll connect them with the student that they know from school, or at least they've seen maybe in the hallway and didn't know who they were, and now they do because they go to the same youth group together. And yeah, they're very quick to make a connection with somebody else, because in the military lifestyle, you got 3 years. And I think there's a pressure that they feel if they don't make a friend quickly, then they're going to kind of miss the bus and not make any friends at all. And of course, nobody wants to be, in that feeling of loneliness or whatever. So I kind of think that's where them wanting to build connections quickly occurs, because they know that if they're going to have any kind of meaningful friendship, relationship, conversation with somebody else, they only got 3 years to do it. And, to be honest, on the flip side of that, on the bright side, right, if there's somebody you just can't stand, just wait a couple of years.
That's right. That's right. But we know that lifelong friendships are made in middle school and in high school, and in college. Those adolescent years, there's certain things that happen that especially military kids, people that I'm very close to right now, they're married to each other. Both were military kids, and so they both know what that lifestyle was like. They both still have some of those friends from the places they would go into high school as they were in the military with their parents. 40 years later, 30 years later, they're still visiting, each other, coming from across the country to see each other. And
if I can give one more story, because as
Absolutely.
you know, as former YFC, we're all about our stories. We had a middle school small group that was about 20 girls at one point. So a small group, no more at that point. But there is a group of, I think, 4 girls who had really felt a passion and a connection enough with each other to write a worship song. And in fact, I had them. That's one of the reasons why I'm so glad that the Lord blessed me over the years to build up the studio, because I all had them in the studio to record together. They recorded their keyboard, the guitar, and all that kind of stuff, the vocals. And then I was able to, master it together and put it as a song, and then send it to them via email. And now they have that memory for the rest of their life, still to connect with one another. But that's a memory they're going to be able to take with them for the rest of their life.
They will absolutely, especially girls more than guys, I think. They will hang on to that as like a real memory of relationship. And I tell students, I tell middle school boys to their face. I'd say, girls, you understand relationships, right? They'd all shake their head, yes. And I'll say, and by the way, everything I'm saying to you girls, the guys are sitting here and they're going, they don't have a clue what we're talking about right now in front of them. And I say, guys, what do you know about relationships? What? Well, yeah. And so girls, they carry it very deeply, very early in life.
Yeah,
so tell us about
going back to the Louis Giglio, right? The boxes and the spaghetti that he talks about. Laugh your way to a better marriage, I think, is the video he did.
You were talking about connecting your students on base with the students in the community, because the idea, and we see it in media, in movies, sitcoms, whatever, that if you're in Hawaii, haoles, that's what not natives are called, right? Haoles. And that's the image, is that no outsiders allowed, no outsiders wanted. So tell me what your take is on that and what you're trying to do.
Yeah, well, I know that by and large, that's a false culture, a false mindset that we have from the local population. There is a small group who definitely don't like any outsiders, and that's not just for what we would call mainlanders, people from the 48 states, 49 states. We don't, as mainlanders, we have this, like, we come to the island and we kind of party it up, and in some people's mind destroy it and then leave, and like we just like, oh, we had fun in Hawaii, now let's go home. There's people that live on the land, there's crops here, there's farmland here, and it's a very delicate ecosystem. I think a lot of the struggle and where that all has come in, and you see it a lot in the movies, is typically a military guy at the bar getting drunk, gets into a fight with a local guy because he's disrespecting the land, or he's disrespected that person, or whatever the case might be. I know that not to be true. I don't have a lot of local friends right now, but again, I just got out of the military, and so I'm starting to build my relationships with others who have been living here all their life, or have some kind of local connection. I'm myself learning all this kind of stuff. But what I do know is that for a majority, we are welcome here because Hawaii is all about this mindset of aloha. Everybody comes to Hawaii, you always hear aloha. Like, you hear it on the airplane when you get on the plane, you hear it on the airplane when you get off the plane, you hear it at the next tourist stop when you go and there's a big party or luau, and it's like aloha, and like that's all you ever hear. When you go to a good luau, and there's some good ones and some good ones at entertainment, but not so much on the history side, but aloha is much more about love for one another. And to put it to a Christian context, we would call aloha the phileo love, the brotherly love that we have for one another. Hawaii, by and large, has that mindset of, let's just love one another as human beings, as people. And so what I want to do, getting to the other part of your question, is eventually, as I start to build my networks with local youth pastors, is to go to the beach with our military group, youth group, and then a local church youth group who has mainly local kids in it. And this is one thing I don't think I mentioned quite earlier. You have all different races, you have all different genders. It's just normal. Like, there is no, at least I haven't seen any like racism in the military. There's some that, will claim they had racist supervisors and stuff. And I'm sure that there have been, because we're all human. That all being said, they're like, when the whole Black Lives Matter thing was going on, I brought it up at club, and I was like, is this something that you guys want me to like dig into and talk about? And I just got blank stares from all of them, because they're like, understand what's going on, because we have never lived that life. If they're African American, they haven't lived in a downtown, Philadelphia or Camden or some of those other places that are notorious. I'm not saying that it is how it is, but they're notorious for Black violence. And so a lot of these kids, they just don't know. So when you get out into the local community, and they run into some of these, local Hawaiians, especially some of the kids who want to have that like Hawaii first mentality, they'll start like bullying and, ragging on the military kid. But I know that that's not the general culture, and I know that that's not a Hawaii aloha. And so I want to have the military kids experience Hawaii, not only because it's beautiful here and it's paradise, but because aloha is the mindset that most people have, and we can go give aloha for them as well as they're going to give it back to us as well.
Yeah, that's a big deal. And you know what? it's a good example to local student ministries anyway, because that may happen there in the military, but I think it happens probably among the multiple youth student ministries, that they don't like to intermingle themselves because there's this perception of, these are my students, those are your students, leave my students alone. Especially if there's a larger student ministry, then what we found that the more we tell students stuff like that or whatever, they'd sense that they would run to some other student ministry anyway, because they were not about that. They wanted to know, I want to be welcome wherever I go. I want to go where I want to go. And so we would encourage students, hey, if you go to our student ministry, bring your friends. If they have another student ministry they go to, go there. Go there too. We want you to be a part of this. This is your church. We want you to be a part of that. If not, you're under no obligation. And the more you tell them there's no obligation for them to have to be there, the more they want to be there. But there was this mentality for decades, and there still is, my students, your students. And I worked with a guy across the county years ago, and I said something to him about it. He had one of the largest student ministries in the county. And I said, how many of those students in the high school are your students? And he looked at me, and with kind of a puzzled look, and he said, all of them. I said, man, that's right. That makes complete sense. It doesn't matter if they go to other student ministries. It doesn't matter if they go nowhere. We are here for the community. We're here for all of them. They're all our responsibility. And it's not yours and mine and ours. And that group had the largest gathering of student youth pastors and organizational groups, missionaries like Campus Life, Young Life, et cetera. And they would do corporate things planned out. They'd meet once a week, and then they'd plan out corporate things. And we had one over in our area as well. But I mean, that was the largest one over in that area. And it's like, of course you do that. And we all feel stings and at times when students go to one place or the other. But in the military thing, it's just very distinctive because you're put in a box by the outsiders. They're military. You're put in a box by yourself. We're military.
So one of the reasons why I'm so thankful that God provided this house the way that he did is because I do live in base housing, but I'm not on the base proper. I don't have to show my ID card to get to my house. And so, for most of the military kids, they live on base. So if they make any local friends outside the base, they have to go see them. And so, as I start to build local connections, I can invite a youth pastor over to my house and not worry about having to get him a pass to come on base or go off base to pick him up and bring him on base. Even though I love bringing people on base, give them tours and show them the base because they've never been on a military base, even to know oh, wow, this is a lot different than what it looks like out in the regular community. We have airplanes on static display on a base. Right. You're not going to see that in downtown Honolulu,
Right. No, that's cool. And so you're off base, but it's still military housing. But it's a little more, there's a military housing with freedom, basically.
Right.
For people to come and go as they please. That's good. That's good. So you guys, that's what you're talking about, that God provided you an incredible place for ministry as well as for your family to live. Now tell me let's talk about Lisa a little bit, because I think you just need to tell everybody how you guys met. Tell us a bit about your love story.
Well, I'll try, even though her version's a little bit different than mine.
It always is. It always is.
I think so, yeah. But so
how'd you guys meet?
We met at Pizza Hut in Nebraska. I was a young airman. I had just moved out of the dorms into a local apartment, and I was kind of bored. At least it was. I don't know about now, but it used to be in Nebraska. If you were under 21 years old, you really couldn't go to the clubs or the bars because they wouldn't let you in if you were under 21. And so I didn't really have much to do. And so I was like, well, let me just get a part-time job so I have something to do. And, I can buy more, big speakers for my car or something, because that's what I was into back then.
Right.
And, I went to Pizza Hut, and actually I saw her, I think she was either flipping or making a pizza. And I was like, she's kind of cute. Let me put an application here and try, work here. Little did I know, and this is part of her story that she would share, is when she either saw me pull up or saw me drive away, because her sister also worked it's a small town, so her entire family pretty much worked at Pizza Hut. They were always trying to like find her a boyfriend, and so I mean, she had a boyfriend at the time, but they knew that I was kind of eyeing her a little bit when I was like filling out the application. And so when I drove away, she saw my 2001 Monte Carlo SS with some nice rims on it, and it was like blue and everything. And she was like, I don't want anything to do with him. He's like some kid that's spoiled by his parents paying for his car and all that kind of stuff. And they were like, no, he's in the military. Like he's he's already on his own. And so anyhow, we started dating, and when we got married, we like to say that she brought me back to religion, and I brought her to the relationship. Because in 2006, my journey into who Jesus was and my faith, I'd never heard about this thing called a relationship with Christ or a relationship with God. But she had been going to church all her life, and I had stopped going to church when I left high school, like many high schoolers do, which is also something I'm working on with the youth group, is to get them motivated to go back to church after they leave the house. So I was learning about this relationship with Christ, and I was into music, like I told you, and I think you read in my bio, right? Like I like karaoke. I still don't really enjoy worship music because I don't really have like a heart of worship. And so I didn't like K-Love. It was like just boring to listen to for me. It just, because I grew up, like I said earlier, I grew up with 50s music, rock and roll, 80s music, the Led Zeppelins, the Van Halens, and all that kind of stuff. In my high school days, I was jamming out to Metallica everywhere I went. Anything on K-Love was just too soft and touchy-feely. And then my friend who brought me to understand this relationship introduced me to people like Red and Lecrae and NF and some of these other Christian rappers and rockers. There's all this music out there. Where has this been in my life? So after that, we continued together to build our relationship and go to church and start learning about who Jesus was, and really build on that relationship that we were both at that point now learning about. And now today, she does at-home daycare. It's her ministry, even though she doesn't really consider it a ministry. But she watches up to 6 kids here in the house. This was a good time to do the podcast because most of the kids are gone by the time we started recording. So
right. And by the way, we're 6 hours difference. Hawaii is 6 hours behind us on the East Coast and Florida, and the East Coast period. And so we had to find our slot. So it was 4 p.m. your time and 10 p.m. my time. And so, and whatever time it is now. So,
well, you're doing great for being this time of night. So,
I did most of my life as a youth pastor and campus life guy. So I was up most nights.
Yeah, fair enough.
Still am. Probably a little different in the military though, because all of your people, all of your families are having to go to bed at dark early and get up at dark early, right? And probably the students are a little bit backwards. Not backwards, probably forwards as far as their sleeping habits.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, I don't usually sleep much past 6 o'clock because my body just gets me up anyway. I've been doing that for 20 years.
Right. Since you got out of high school, your body was actually adjusting. We talk about the cellular system and the rapid change of the adolescent body. And my dad started smoking when he was 9 years of age, and it probably would have killed him to stop. He died when he was 80, possibly because of the smoking with cancer stuff. But he was 80 and he worked hard till he was like the year before, But the cellular system connects and adapts whatever we're throwing at it. And you were still in that adolescent stage at 18-ish and on, and they whooped you right into a 6 a.m. frenzy, didn't they?
Right. Yeah, bedpan and all. Ding, 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 ding.
There you go. That's it, man. How did Lisa come to the same conclusion that you came to, that you guys needed to be in student ministry full time?
Well, honestly, I don't know if she's there yet. She supports, what I do in the ministry, but she's still trying to figure out her role in that. And, maybe that's a learning point for anybody listening to the podcast is sometimes you get the call into ministry and your spouse is trying to keep up or catch up. And so, at this point in our life, this is how I kind of look at it. We both have our own ministry that relates to one another, even though it's not always directly impacted by one another. Know that sometimes you're going to get the calling, and if you already got the calling, your spouse might either be waiting for their own, or they might not feel it the way that you do. And so Lisa's kind of in that boat. Like, she doesn't quite know where she fits in or how she fits in, which I keep on, telling her and, loving on her and saying, you're doing enough just by being my wife and letting me go do all this youth ministry things. She shows up on Wednesday nights to help take attendance, which is great. And she's building on her relational building while she's, oh, yep, you're here, thanks. And it's even harder now with masks on because you only see like this much of somebody's face.
Exactly.
And so she's like, wait, oh, I know those eyes. Yeah, you're so and so.
That's right. Please stand 12 feet back and take your mask off. Let me see who I got.
All right. But her ministry right now is, I think, the at-home childcare, the daycare. And now it could be, and there'd be a few years gap in between, but if we were serving somebody who was local and not all military families like we do right now, she would have the child from like birth until kindergarten, and then I might pick him back up again at 6th grade in the youth group, and then I'd have the kid the rest of the time through 12th grade. So she does a lot, and she doesn't really like when I brag on her too much. It makes her cry and stuff. But, if she does listen to this podcast, she is definitely a superhero in my book because of everything she does, taking care of the house, being the homemaker and also being a mom and being a wife and doing the daycare here at the house. So.
Well, what you just said was that women are a lot better than men. So anyway, they do a lot more. And listen, there's some truth to that. And I don't know that she has to have your calling, but here's the deal: when you're married and you're in ministry, you're both in ministry. But here's one thing I will tell you, and of course you're in campus life. There's a lot more freedom. There's a lot more freedom in campus life than there was being in a full-time ministry in church. But there was consistent money when I was in church. And a lot less freedom. Even though the church I was at was amazing, they allowed me to do what I was doing in campus life, and we came in we called it militant because we really didn't want to work in a church. And the one thing that I told them about Colleen, my wife, said, by the way, you're not hiring her, you're hiring me, because I know in pastors what they would do is they would abuse the family. They didn't think they were. They thought this is the way it is. And senior pastors thought that was the way it was too, and allowed their wives to be verbally abused, emotionally abused, as well as the children. And that's just not right. And it's not right under God. Your job and my job is to protect them. And she's going to be, I don't know if you'll do retreats, you'll do trips or what you do, but I figured my wife was a single mom, possibly 20, this is conservatively on the low side, 20 weeks out of the year, 20 weeks out of 50, 52 weeks in a year. And so, and this is year after year after year, first child, second child, third child. And as Doug Fields, I don't know if you've ever heard of Doug Fields, who was, he's got a lot of books out and stuff. But I remember that he said, my wife was my best volunteer. Even after we had our first child, still my best volunteer. Even after we had the second child, best volunteer. Had the third child, she was okay. But anyway, because let me tell you what, any of those children, number one, women tend to have a higher pain threshold than we do. They have a higher tolerance level than we do. They have some and they were, and in this political world that we're in, that doesn't go well for us to say those things. But in the spiritual realm, and women that do understand it do say that. But yeah, exactly. You just keep encouraging her, and you keep telling her, honey, listen, I'm just blessed to have you the way you are. And if you want to do something, that's great. But if you don't, you've got more than enough ministry just handling yourself and your daughter. That's
for some reason,
amazing.
There's an expectation in churches, and I don't know where it comes from, where the head pastor's wife has to do XYZ, or like the
And
lead
I knew
pastor wife has to
ex-pastors,
run the women's ministry, and it's like, what?
right. And I knew pastors' wives that actually decided to work out in the world so that they didn't have as much of that responsibility. And I don't blame them,
Right.
because they people just are ruthless and relentless when it comes to those things. I say things about board people, and I don't mind saying it because on this end of it, I don't plan on being hired by a church again or another organization. I want to help people like you be raw, be understanding, to hear some of these things. But I say something bad happens to good people when they get on a board. And when they get, they change personalities. It's a spiritual, once again, it's a spiritual warfare. When they get into church, they're nicer on the outside of church than they are the inside of the church half the time. And the same, I think, with organizations like Campus Life. So let's go on, though. Let's talk about. Let me look at these questions real quick. Make sure I know that we've jumped around some things, but that's okay because. It's the things that we're touching on are very, very important anyway. Tell me some of the, what's one of the biggest fears that you have in your life? It doesn't have to be about ministry. What's the biggest fear that you've got that you can share, that you're willing to share?
Um, I mean, I guess my biggest fear is, and this is gonna maybe sound, I guess, cheesy or corny or whatever, but it's true, because I think it's very real, and I don't think that uh, Christians especially give it enough thought. But we've talked a lot this episode about spiritual warfare, and my biggest fear is that one day I will fail at relying on the Lord. And with all the spiritual warfare that's been going on recently and over the last couple of years, even though not as prevalent as some of the more recent examples I discussed earlier, um, I have done well to, even though I got upset about it or down about it or whatever, I still maintain focus on the Lord and still maintain going out to do my quiet times out at the channel where the ships come in, and still maintaining, prepping for club and just not letting all these little things kind of get to me enough to where it distracted me from the mission. Because when it comes down to it, the mission that I've been called to is the youth group and the youth ministry. And if I give up on the kids, then I give up on God, and that's just not proper. And so, for anybody that's listening and has gotten this far, don't give up on God, even though you want to give up on yourself.
Yeah, that's a very real thing. There's a second book that I've got. My first book, Burn Up, Not Out, is out now. It took me way too long. It's only about 60 pages long. I told my friend it only took me 10 pages a year to write, so 6 years. But actually, been written for a long, long time. It took me that long to finally get it published. Just a short book. But the second one was on rest up. And the biggest failure that a lot of us have is that because we fight the fight on our own, that we're not rested. And rest is a very low on the totem pole. That people don't even know what a totem pole is. The low on the scale of what a value in the American life. It's becoming more valuable, but I got a feeling that resting, and it's as the name of the book is Rest Up. I was going to call it Rest Up or Dry Up, but I thought that was negative too, just like you're talking about. So it's going to be Rest Up to build, Rest Up to grow up, or to build up. And I'm the only guy that probably has had 4 sabbaticals, 3-month full off, no contact with the church sabbaticals, with your ministry. They made us do that. That was a miracle that a church actually understood that and believed that. And so we go into that. There's things that happen after 6 weeks. There's things that happen after that full 3 months. Your body, your mind, your spirit changes. Your family changes. And so I got to see that up close and personal 4 times. And so that's where the book Rest Up came from, and I did a lot of research. I've got a feeling that you guys in the military get that. Tell me about
Well,
rest.
and
I mean, y'all are pushed beyond your limits, and you're trained to push beyond your limits because of war and training for war and things like that to protect us. But I got a feeling you also understand the importance of rest, and that's why. So tell me about rest.
yeah, well, and I'll be honest with you. I mean, I know that you said I sounded like I was 140 years old with my bio that you read. Um,
Exactly right.
but I have not had the same military experience as a lot of others do. I worked a lot of desk jobs where I worked a 9 to 5. It was a very simple time. Even in my deployments, there, what most other military would probably consider like cush deployments, because I didn't really have the same deployment experience that a lot do. I never served any time like outside the wire, which it's what we call off base in a deployed environment. I never had to deal with driving an up armored Humvee, down a street and worrying about IEDs. And so, those guys, especially infantry and security forces and all the other units that go out the wire, outside the wire, they definitely learn how to get rest. And I mean, you'll see it in movies. I think that's one thing they do portray well, is these guys will sleep anywhere because they have to, because that's the only time they're going to get rest, because when it's time to go, it's time to go, and you have no more time for rest. And so, I mean, you'll see them, hanging upside down on 2 chairs in an airport sleeping, and you're like, my 13-year-old does that. How do you do that? And it's like, it's just, they're getting their rest in. And I wanted to share, if I can, when it comes to rest, especially in the ministry, what I've found to be helpful is ministry partners. I know that earlier we talked about like how to donate funds and stuff like that. And that's a very big part of rest, because we can take a rest and a break from worrying about finances coming in to support the ministry. But I also look
Absolutely.
for ministry partners who want to come in and support the ministry in person, whether they come in and they run games on one side or the other, because we split up middle school and high school groups. If they want to come in and give a talk, then I can take a rest from, giving a talk every single week, and they just listen to me talk and over and doing horrible dad jokes and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
So ministry partners financially help out hugely for rest, but so do ministry partners who come in and join the ministry staff to help do the work that you do. So,
Yeah, those things are all true, and we do need those partners that come alongside us and that add to the ministry. We like to hear different people. Our students like to hear different people too. They like to know that you're not threatened by that. There's some youth pastors, campus life directors, whatever, that are threatened by other people coming in, but that is the absolute wrong concept. In fact, you need to find the best speakers possible. It used to be the rule was that you get somebody worse than you to come speak, and that makes you look good. Well, the opposite is true. Then they think, my guy, he has no idea what a good speaker is. Look at the guys he's bringing. No, the deal is you bring in the very best people that are even better than you. And then your people go, man, at least our pastor understands who's really good out there and who can minister to us. And so I think those things are brilliant. I'll tell you what, I
one thing that I want to share, sorry to cut you off. But
No. This is about you.
I'm really
not about me.
excited. I'm really excited for tomorrow night. Tomorrow night's Wednesday. I don't know when somebody's going to listen to this podcast, but tomorrow's Wednesday, March 24th, and I actually have a senior, who approached me after a small group, and he said, "Hey, Mr. Chase, I'm feeling kind of led to like give a message to everybody on peer pressure." And I was like, "Sweet, man, let's do it." And like, send me a script and help let me coach you through how to build up a message. And of course, his first script, he was only going to be up there for like 5 minutes, and so we sat down and we worked on it. And I mean, he's going to have a pretty good 15-minute presentation, a message that involves a little bit about his story and where he's coming from and why he felt led to even give this talk. And then another thing, I think most people, most youth pastors, youth missionaries, or wherever you serve, maybe not. You're a planner though, and so at the start of the semester, I like to have a plan of like, okay, what are we going to talk about this semester? What's like the overarching theme? And you know, every now and then, either the chaplain or like one of the leaders, they'll approach me and they'll say, "Hey, I'm feeling led to give a talk about this," and I'll be like, "Okay, let's do it," because again, that goes back to, it's not about me, and this is like my mentality on the messages too. I'm very aware that the Holy Spirit's going to move people to give give a message or give a talk or share an experience, and who am I to get in the Holy Spirit's way? And so whenever I have somebody approach me like that, of course I'm in prayer about it to make sure that it is the Holy Spirit that's interceding
Right.
and not
Hmm.
some other spiritual warfare going on. But usually it is the Holy Spirit, and I'm not going to get in the Holy Spirit's way.
No, it's great. Plus, I mean, that's ministry. That spiritual training that you're giving that student, and students hear their peers. Years ago, there was somebody that I don't know if they took a poll or what it was that they took. I don't remember the whole thing, but a bad speech by a peer in your adolescent time is better than the greatest speech from an adult. And so not only is he going to get something out of this, the students are going to get something out of this, because it's also the what was it, the 4 minute mile? I think I said that really wrong one time. The 4 minute mile. Yeah, if he can do it, now I can do it. I didn't think anybody could do it. Now I can. And so that student gets up and speaks, and so there's going to be other students who go, "Oh man, he can do it. I think I can do that." It's that, and plus the Holy Spirit starts speaking because this kid actually said yes to the Holy Spirit, and so the others start hearing God because somebody else heard him. I think it's great. It's awesome stuff that you're talking about there, and it's things that are going to continue happening over the years and time. And one thing that we talked about, or that was the longevity. Longevity is an important factor. You're there 3 years. If Campus Life and Youth for Christ model is right, at the end of your 5th year, you're going to have students getting into contact with you and going, because you said, because you did, now I've asked Jesus in my heart all these years later, or this has happened in my family, and it's because I heard the things you taught us, and you didn't think I did, but I did. And for you're in the military thing there, it might have already happened to you because everything's accelerated there, because the kids are
Right.
going, I better make friends fast, I better learn fast because I'm going to be gone. you
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
so but longevity is important, and seeing those things. Tell me some things. What was the greatest thing, the greatest trip that you and your wife has done to date? Is there something that you guys have done? I think you talked about that you guys are really homebodies. Is that right? Was you really like to be at home more than anything? Was that you?
It's more just a fear of going off, going out anywhere without knowing where we're going. And I think that's the military mindset. Like, I need to know, like, okay, here's point A, and then I turn and go to point B, and like I know where I'm going. And but no, I think for me, and maybe this is a spiritual thing that I need to work on, because I think we all are sinners. But
Right.
I don't like dealing with people just in general. And so, in Hawaii, I mean, COVID's been great because the traffic has been nothing like it used to be.
Yes.
But going to any kind of event, I just don't want to go because I know it's going to be a bunch of other people. And, right now with COVID, they're doing all these like drive-in events at the stadium. And it's like, hey, that's great. It's like drive in. I don't have to get out of my car and like deal with other people. But
Yeah.
now I have to be in traffic and deal with people that don't know how to drive.
That's right. You guys, that's right. You're taught to think. There's a guy, a military guy, who wrote a book called "Sheep No More," and he was trying to get it out to people. I can't remember who the guy was, but he was talking about what military people know. Basically, is they are always looking for where danger could come from, where it's going to come from, and they're always ahead, several steps ahead of trouble. And so that's, I think, the mindset that you're talking about. Is that right?
That sounds pretty accurate right there. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Sheep no
Yeah.
more. So I need to
Yeah.
get that book. I haven't seen it. I haven't gotten it yet. But but yeah, yeah. So no real places, nothing big that you guys have done in your marriage together, or anything that was pretty spectacular, or that nobody knows about, that, or you've never just talked about, that would be cool for people to know.
Well, I mean, I think as a married couple, one of our favorite memories that we've done as husband and wife was Gatlinburg, Tennessee. We went
Mm-hmm.
there and just had a lot of fun, going around to the different tourist spots, and we rented out a cabin there, so cabin in the woods kind of thing. Um,
Oh yeah.
Now, one of our favorite times from that, and now actually, um, I'm gonna plug this YouTube channel. I don't remember what the channel is called, but if you just go on YouTube and search for the Miracle play or Miracle live action play or something like that, it was at Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, and
Hmm.
it was like one of them like big production theaters, and we've never been to theaters before, but we really enjoy like dinner and a show kind of stuff where there's theater and like theatrics and also dinner, and there's a lot of that in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, right?
Oh
And
yeah. Oh, very
so
much so.
we went to this it was called The Miracle, and that was the theater that was called as well, and it was a play about Jesus. And I actually got to show a clip from this play recently to the youth group just because it applied to the message that I was given that night. Um, but it's one of our favorite memories because it was just so powerful of a message, and also the first and only time I've ever been to a musical where there was live action horses coming down the aisles
Oh
and like
wow.
angels flying above us, like up in the rafters and stuff. And it was really unique. And yeah, that was probably one of our most fun family trips. We did do Disney World one time.
Yeah.
Um,
There you go.
so I was there, and this is kind of more about my story. I thought my calling and my goal in life after the military was to be a coach, a life coach,
Yeah.
and do that through John Maxwell. And so I came
Mm-hmm.
to Orlando to go to the John Maxwell certification with John Maxwell team. And while I was in the conference for 4 days out of the 5 days that we were there, my family was down there going to Disney World every day and getting the princess signatures and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so my favorite part of that entire time, I don't know if it was right after we went to Disney World that day or one of the nights before, but we went to a Longhorn Steakhouse. And like I said earlier, I follow Twitter because of SpaceX and Elon Musk and stuff. I'm a space
Right.
nerd. I love all things space. I love watching launches when I can. I watch them
Oh,
all, whether they're boring or not, online on YouTube.
and we
So
usually
we
get to see
were
them live here,
right. So
from
we were
wherever
at
we are.
Longhorn, and I got a YouTube notification from one of the YouTubers I watch, Tim Dodd, the Everyday Astronaut, and it said that there was a rocket launch, and I was like, "There's a
Oh
rocket launch
wow.
tonight." And so I'm
Wow.
watching it on my phone as the countdown's going because you never know if they're going to hold, right? So I'm watching the
Exactly.
countdown. I think we got down to like T minus 30 seconds. And I rushed me and my daughter outside to go see if we could find the rocket. And sure enough, we saw this little orange glow as it was climbing up into the clouds. And
Oh
that
yeah.
was one of my favorite experiences from Orlando.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that is cool, and those never get old to us. So we can imagine if you've never got to see one live and you're there. I mean, you're military; you've got to see all kinds of jets take off and everything else. And by the way, with our sons at a Promise Keepers event in DC, we got to stand at the end of Andrews Air Force Base and watch some F 18s, I believe it was, fly over and get real close to us and stuff. So we
Yeah.
got a little bit of what you got on a regular basis. We got once in a lifetime, So,
Yeah.
but
Well, and I'll tell
yeah,
you a
yeah,
personal story. I was in Hurlburt Field, Florida, up in the Panhandle. I think you
yeah,
guys call it Panhandle, right?
yep,
Um,
that's right. Near
yeah.
Pensacola.
And I was up there for a month for a training, and I found out that there was going to be a space shuttle launch down at the Cape that weekend. And I was like, to my class, I was like, hey, I'm going to the Cape this weekend. Who wants to go with me? Like, that's like, I know it's like an 8 hour drive or 12-hour drive or something ridiculous.
Oh, it's about
But
8. It's about 8. Yeah.
yeah. And I was like, but I don't care. I'm going to go watch this launch. So my story from that launch is, I did have one classmate out of the 30 that I was with decide to go with me. I was so focused on getting it on my video camera that I don't really remember much of the launch itself.
oh,
And I don't have the footage anymore because it got lost on a hard drive that crashed.
oh, I'm so
So
sorry.
the memory's just gone, but I know that I went to the space shuttle launch before they ended the program. So
Well, the big deal, if you're that close to it, is that you could feel it, even if you're like 30 miles away. And I'm sure
yep.
you felt it. So,
Yeah, we were across the bay. I don't remember which viewing spot it was, but it was one of the normal like viewing spots.
no, if you're just across the bay, you felt that thing. I mean, that was
Yeah.
one powerful event. But that's huge. That's huge. Well, listen, tell us how we can pray for you. What else can we do and pray for you? We know we need to pray about finances. Or is there a prayer that you'd like to share, or a verse you'd like to share with youth workers like yourself? And I better back up here a little bit. You guys are connected now. All of you guys are under one roof as far as ministry, as far as military bases with Youth for Christ USA campus life. Is that right? That's what we
That is
said?
right. Mm-hmm.
That's right. So what does that mean now? How are you guys able to help each other and play off of that power? Is there something happening there that Youth for Christ has put together that makes it almost more tangible for you guys?
Well, the biggest, I guess you could say, difference in my opinion that I've seen, and again, it's just happened, so we're still trying to figure out what military chapter like looks like and acts like. Is on the finance side, right? You can donate. Anybody can donate to the chapter at large instead of individuals. Like, you still donate individually to the missionary who is serving your student, your family, or whatever. But if it's somebody that works out in the middle of nowhere, trying to think of a state that doesn't have a base in it. Name a state that doesn't have a base in it. Good luck. But, you have somebody out there and they just want to donate to the YFC military chapter, or we have a large donor who, they want to donate $100,000. Well, are you going to want to donate that to the single military missionary person, or do you want to donate it to the YFC military chapter? Because when you do that, that opens up the door for the sites underneath that chapter to pull those resources to fund. For me, like, say I want to open up a new site here on the island over at the Marine Corps base. I can use $20,000 or $30,000, maybe, let's say, to support somebody who's just coming on staff. And they don't have to fundraise right away or wait 3 years to get fully funded before they open up the site. Or in somebody like in my case, right, I'm volunteering, essentially doing my job for 3 years until I'm, finally on paid staff. And I guess to me, that's just part of the calling, is you're not really concerned as much with the finances because you know that you're called to it. And as long as you have a support system behind you, which at the time as active duty military, I had my military paycheck supporting me and the housing allowance was paid for and everything.
Right.
So I didn't really need to worry about, my income and my fundraising. But if I have somebody from the local community who I meet at Pac Rim Christian University and they say, hey, I'd like to come on staff. I feel called to youth ministry. And, we talk for a year and they support and volunteer for a year. So I get to know them a little bit. We can provide them an offer of, $20,000 or whatever, something small, and say, hey, do you want to come on staff, get paid this X amount of money for a year and help start this new site on another part of the island. And that's really like the biggest thing for me as a military chapter, because everything else, even as affiliates, we still came together on a pretty regular basis to just talk about ministry, talk about how we can support one another, talk about how we do different things within the military context.
Mhm.
But aside from all that, that's really going to be one of the bigger things is the financial side of the house. And fun story just to share really quick. I guess at least what I was told is right now with COVID and everything, we're the only site that's being allowed to do in-person activities at the military bases. And so
Wow.
we have this event that's going to be coming up soon. I don't know how much longer for them to get the rest of the videos together, but it's called See the Story, and See the Story well, as former YFC.
Yeah.
And so See the Story is essentially going to allow people to understand what the mission looks like, what the ministry looks like. And for us specifically, it's going to be a See the Story for the military chapter. And so I actually shared a clip on my Facebook of a student who shared a little bit of a story with a volunteer leader that I used to have here before he PCS'd, moved away to another base. And,
Hmm.
that's just so exciting to see that. And then I also had got some videos of us playing club and doing games together. And one thing I never learned about myself until I rewatched the video that was taken of club as it was happening is I don't know if I was doing an announcement or if I was praying or what, but I had like this like body motion with my head, and I was like, as I was talking, I was like, I didn't know I moved that much when I talk.
That's great. Well, I tell you, we've covered a lot of stuff here, and I want you to know, Chase, thanks for taking a chance with me, because I know that this podcast is new to you. I am new to you, and military people know to be cautious with people,
Yeah.
and rightfully so. Yeah, I appreciate it when people do a background check and start listening to the podcast to see, okay, is this thing consistent? What are they talking about? Is it so random and not really helping anybody? But you've listened to a few of the podcasts, and obviously you're on here, so you must have liked something, you know.
Yeah. Well, and so, I think I'm still listening to your podcast, and I really have enjoyed the speakers that you've had. I went all the way back to episode 1 so I can just start listening.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I just like order, right? That's military in me. Like I want the order, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But
I have
if
many
I can
friends
also
like
talk
you.
about another podcast that I have been listening to, that's been very helpful for me locally
Yeah.
because, like, I don't want to knock your podcast at all, but when I see a 40-minute podcast, I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to set aside some time to go listen to this
Right.
because, and I don't know if it's the military in me or what, but I don't like watching something and then not coming to finish and then going back to it and then listening to it again or more or whatever.
Right.
Because then
Hmm.
I have to think back, okay, what did I hear before so I can catch up to what I'm watching now or
Yeah.
listening to now. And so this other podcast, Ministry Leader Podcast, is from a YFCer in Indianapolis, or in Indiana, I should say. And they're 15-minute snippets, like really good stuff, all in 15 minutes. And my usual commute to work is about 15 minutes. And so I
Yeah.
can listen to
Yeah.
one episode and get from point A to point B.
Hmm.
To listen to some of yours, I do have to set aside some time, which I do because even 3 years into it, and I know I think you said in your Burn Up Not Out book, is that what it's called,
Right.
right?
Burn up, not out.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I got it right. All right, good plug.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
um,
Yes.
but I think you said that most youth missionaries or ministries only last like 18 months in the field. Um,
Youth
and I
workers.
feel
Right.
like, I've been doing this for 3 years. I'm still new. I still don't quite understand everything that I'm supposed to be doing or am doing. And so 18 months just sounds like you didn't even give it a chance. And that's not a knock on anybody. If you're not called to the ministry, don't do the ministry. But if you're called, you got to stick through it, because there's going to be some hard times. And no matter what context you're in, whether it's like me, where I lose, students every 2 to 3 years, or my friend over in DC, some of their students, they lose friends every other weekend because of gun violence. And it's like, that's hard stuff to swallow, and you just got to stick through it and just rely on God to bring you through it. And so, yeah, even after 3 years, I know that I still have a lot of growing to do in the ministry and understanding what the Lord has called me to.
Yeah, and that's absolutely right. Those are good words, and people need to hear that. And usually, what happens, though, I think there's no usually. Number one, it's warfare, and I think what happens is the value is so high for the need for youth pastors and youth workers and campus life directors, young life directors, and all that. That there is some carnage. There's a martyr factor to it, because the warfare is so hard, so heavy. And here's one of the reasons that people leave early. And that is, number one, someone told them it wasn't going to be hard. You know what I'm saying? At churches,
Yeah.
especially, they go, especially with volunteers, they go, oh, it won't take much time. It's not going to be that hard. And when there's a book called Unsung Heroes that saved my butt with volunteers, and it should have been the same thing that was said to every youth pastor, every campus life director that comes on, and that is this is going to be hard. And it's going to be harder than you think it's going to be. And we're going to support you. We're going to pray for you. The other thing is, churches and youth organizations like Campus Life understand a little more, and they do a pretty good job. Young Life, in fact, I tell churches, if you want a youth pastor, go to one of those organizations and find a guy that God's moving that way from there. Because when you're in Campus Life, you are taught to be a community leader. You're taught to look at the community, the culture. You have to raise your funds. You have to look at the full picture. The weight of the world is on you, and you're taught that it's on you, and that you can do whatever you want in ministry, but you're going to have to work for it and work at it and depend on God to do it. And what happens is, the reason people aren't lasting more than 18 months, and I joke that Youth for Christ, it was like 18 minutes, because we went through 22 staff in the first program I was in 6 months. We went through 22 staff, and that was a very unusual situation. But churches don't know how to hire. Big churches, little churches, medium churches, they're going, we just need someone young, and it's just going to be a stepping stone. They don't realize this is a calling. There are many of us that are called to this, and if you don't allow the people the freedom to know that this is a calling and we recognize it, then they're going to be moving along. And also, there are unwritten expectations that churches, you're going into situations, and they here in their head have this expectation that even each other on the boards don't know about. And they don't have that in writing. The guy or the girl that's coming in, these agendas are not addressed. And I think that's why 18 months is about how long they last, because no one knows what the game plan is. The youth pastor or youth worker doesn't, nor does the board, even though they have some guidelines. They really don't know what they're asking for. And I think that's why that 18 months has been consistent over the years, because no one really, truly addresses it. And as churches, as Christians, we're pretty autonomous. We just about do what we want. So we don't have to do it the right way, if there is a right way, and right. There is. And so that's really what happens. But someone like yourself, and that's why I love military people, you came into this thing knowing what hard was. You may have done a desk job, but you knew what boot camp was. and you knew what other people, and you knew that there were people in Afghanistan and in Iraq that you knew that didn't come home. The intensity and what it is. And now you look at ministry as warfare, which it is as well. And you're going, okay, is what I'm dealing with emotions, or is it warfare? Or is it warfare in my emotions? And you're going through this whole analysis of stuff, whereas the average person does not have that ability to analyze unless it's a natural ability. They may just be going, I just want to change the world. I don't know what that looks like. I just want to change the world. And it looks a lot different when you go into this place or that place. And so once again, and my podcasts are long. I was trained by these guys that the stats said that the average person, once again, they must not be talking military, right? The average person doesn't care how long the podcast is, because they're going to be on a longer commute and they're going to be listening. Once again, you got a short commute. We got to lengthen your commute so that you can listen to my podcast.
Yeah. Well, I mean, back on the mainland, when I was in Louisiana, I went to a place called Church at Red River. And if anybody over there listens to this podcast, shout out to Church at Red River.
There you go.
I would drive 40 minutes to go to church on a Sunday morning.
Exactly.
Family would do that. And that was normal. But on the island, 40 minutes will get you across the island if there's no traffic. And so,
right.
We're
going to see if we can start cutting them down to 40, at least so the island people can make it. But yeah. The world gets to hear what you're talking about. Some of the people that are doing what you're doing are going to get to hear your words, and it's going to be encouraging to them. Some of the wives, some of the husbands, some of the students are going to hear what you had to say, and their hearts are going to be warmed. And some of them, the Holy Spirit's going to speak to and go, you can do that. You can go farther, because He's seen those hard times. You need to give this money to Chase and Lisa and their daughter, because they're fighting the fight. And so whenever this comes out, it's going to be up as long as podcasts are in the world until Jesus comes, and people are like you. Some of these podcasts are 3 years old, that almost 4 years old, that you're listening to now. 2017, we started this thing. I think the first one we released was in September of 2017. And we started recording in March of 2017. Thank you. Bless you. I pray that God will pour out incredible favor with you in every way, and particularly in a financial way, because money does make the world go round in a lot of things. You still have to pay your bills. You still have to bring some security to your family so that they feel released from the burden of the lack of money. I'm praying that God will open the windows of heaven. He owns all the gold and silver and all the mines. We used to sing that little children's song, but it's true. The scriptures talk about it. So God, show up for Chase and Lisa. That's my prayer for you. And Youth Worker Nation, that you get in touch with Chase and encourage him. It doesn't have to be financial. If it can be as well, do that. But encourage him to fight the fight, keep going the distance, and tell him what a great job this was on this podcast, and to encourage him. All right, buddy, appreciate it. Anything else you want to tell us that you just on your heart right now?
No, I think that'll do it. I'm if anybody can tell, I'm kind of sweaty. My office is above the garage, and the air conditioner doesn't work well in this room. And of course, you got the bright lights and the hot computer in front of you, and so yeah, I'm getting kind of sweaty. So,
hey,
don't mind the sweat. Just pray for me.
No, man, I can't tell the sweat. It makes you actually look real nice and glowy on the video here, and so it looks nice. But no, I'm sweating on my end too. It's been very cold here in Florida. That's crazy. But up in my office, and I got the lights on me too. It is hot. And so we've endured a lot for this almost 2 hours here, buddy. All right. Yep. Listen, God bless, Chase, and we'll talk again. And feel free to call me, text me, email me anytime so we can hang out, okay?
Yeah, maybe I'll bring you on my own YouTube video when I start doing that. So,
Oh yeah, please do. I'd appreciate it. Hey man, you
all
better
right.
get some supper. I bet you haven't eaten yet.
No, it's cooking right now. It's Tuesday, so it's Taco Tuesday tonight.
Oh
So,
baby. Oh baby. All right.
yeah. All
All
right.
right. Go have your Taco Tuesday. Tell Lisa hello for me.
All right. Aloha, brother.
Aloha.